and welcome to Online Business Uncovered. This is episode 161. And in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about what it really takes to build a strong online brand with branding expert Gemma Storey. We're going beyond just the logos, the colours and the visuals. So let's jump right in and let's get started. Welcome to Online Business Uncovered, the show that lifts the lid on what it really takes to turn your brilliance into digital products, passive income, and time freedom. I am your host, Karen, an online business strategist, course creation expert, and your go-to for building a business that works for you and not the other way around. If you are an ambitious entrepreneur feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, or maybe you're just ready for a smarter, more sustainable way to grow, then you're in the right place. Because each week I'll be bringing you inspiring conversations, practical strategies, and step-by-step guidance to help you create scalable, repeatable digital products that sell even while you sleep. So if you're ready to stop trading your time for money, reclaim your time, and finally build a business that gives you the freedom that you deserve, hit subscribe and tune in every Thursday. Let's uncover what's truly possible for you, starting now. Hello and welcome to another episode of Online Business Uncovered. I am your host, Karen, and I really do appreciate you hitting the play button to listen to this episode. Now, I've got a special episode today because I am joined by branding expert Gemma Storey to talk about what branding really means when you're building an online business. Because the truth is, branding is so much more than just logos, colours and fonts. Your brand is about how people experience you online. It's the message you communicate, the feeling that people get when they land on your content, and the reason someone chooses you over everyone else offering something similar. And when you're creating digital products, memberships, courses, or online services, having a clear, aligned brand can make a huge difference in how confidently you show up and how consistently your business grows. So inside this conversation, we break it all down and we talk about what makes a brand work online, the biggest branding mistakes that entrepreneurs make, and how to build a consistent brand without having to constantly reinvent yourself. This episode is honest, it's practical and incredibly empowering for anybody who wants to create a business that feels aligned, sustainable and memorable online. So let's jump right in and let's get started. So Gemma, welcome to today's episode. Do you want to start by introducing yourself and telling the listeners who you are, what you do, because you do some great stuff.
Yeah, well, hey Karen, thank you so much for having me. I'm Gemma. I call myself a brand alchemist. So essentially I work with female entrepreneurs that are wanting to build a personal brand, but I guess the alchemy comes from my sort of witchy process that I like to use. So I like to use self-discovery tools like astrology and my own sort of intuition. I feel like one of my strong points is I'm able to sort of get the essence of who I'm working with and turn that into a creative brand that people can use to build their business with. So I know I'm biased, but I certainly believe that your brand is very much the identity of who you are online. And so the more you put that out there in an authentic and consistent way, that's what builds your dream clients and magnetizes them to you. So I call that so aligned branding. And that's pretty much been my mission, along with other things like Canva. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love your brand. I have to say, we were talking just before we came on, and I was saying to Gemma that her branding is so unique and different that it really stands out. And I think if you want to see how somebody uses their personality to really communicate who they are and what they're about, then go and check out Gemma's branding, because it is very different. And I can imagine actually it isn't for everybody, but you're not trying to target everybody. You're trying to target the ones that align with you and what you're about. And I think you do it brilliantly with your own brand.
And did you know that actually the brand that you see now wasn't how I started? And actually, it was the total opposite. So if I go back a few years, about 8 years ago, I had a huge burnout at my old job, which was a design agency, which I was very grateful to have. But I think slowly as I got into that, I realized it wasn't lighting me up. So as you can imagine, I was the only female in a male dominated environment. The projects were aviation and banks and doctors and all these type of things. And then so when I eventually left the agency and wanted to go solo, I felt I had to emulate that corporate brand to be professional. So it was very much black and white, very much like serif fonts, and nothing what you see today in terms of the witchy pastel lilac aesthetic. And unfortunately, what that does do, it attracts misaligned clients. They weren't wrong people in a such. It just wasn't people that lit me up in terms of my best work or the project. And so I think it was around 2020 that I decided to do a bit of a rebrand. At the time, I decided to hire a business coach. And she said straight away, "You are holding back." And I said, "It's because I'm worried about putting my true authentic self out there, because I'm worried people will see me as hippy dippy or not professional enough." And I thought, if you can't be yourself, what's the point? And so I went full in. And if anyone remembers the TV show Sabrina the Teenage Witch in the 90s, that is me to my core. I've even got a cat called Salem who literally talks. And so that has been the whole inspiration of my brand. Yes, it's witchy, but it's also fun and magical and just warming. And that's what I wanted to get across. And so that's been my mission with other clients, is please just brand who you are, regardless of what people think or any sort of mindset things that we worry about.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I'm smiling because I had exactly the same thing when I left. So like you, I used to work at a design agency, and when I left to start my design business, that's exactly what I lent into, was the corporate feel. And mine was my very first one, my freelancing identity was dark grey, charcoal grey and lime green. And when I look back at it now, I'm like, that's not me at all. And then it kind of got a little bit softer. But it took some time to really get comfortable and to kind of be expressive in your own identity, to let people know what you're about. But I remember exactly feeling like that. You know, you come out of a corporate environment, you're almost carrying their identity. You don't have an identity of your own. And then it's like, oh, what am I about? How do I need to be seen? And then, of course, you kind of go to what you know, which is that past sort of corporate feeling and everything. So I think being able to express yourself and to really capture your personality and your brand is something so incredibly powerful. And it is exactly what stands you out.
It does.
You know, and we met at networking, didn't we? You were given the talk, and I remember seeing your design and thinking, wow, that I love that, because it was so different.
And that's the thing, like what you were saying, it's quite vulnerable to put yourself out there as a personal brand. And you're absolutely right in saying it is different. And that was my biggest worry. But actually, what I've come to learn, and this is a big lesson of mine, is your brand is actually meant to attract and repel. You know, sometimes I get the odd DMs where someone says to me, you know, can I talk to you about Jesus? What you're doing is demonic, or it seems, you know, those sort of things. But I'm not going to attract those people, and nor would I want to work with them. So that's the beauty of having an aligned brand, is it does the heavy lifting for you. It attracts those like-minded people and repels the people that you just wouldn't be able to help anyway. But it's a vulnerability thing, and it's definitely an ongoing process. You just have to start somewhere and just trust that you know where you're going.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think your branding is an evolution. And I think as you grow in your business and you grow personally, you become a bit more fearless, when it comes to being able to, express yourself and demonstrate that through the identity of your business.
Yes.
And I know myself, I've gone through reiterations of my own branding. But when I launched my branding studio, Pink Lemon, that was highly creative because I wanted to demonstrate the personality behind the brand and what it all kind of meant and all of that. And obviously that the branding can be fun as well. It doesn't have to be that boring corporate, very like monotone colours. You can actually
person, don't they?
yeah, that's it. Everything's so serious, and and it should be fun. As I said, you're expressing yourself, but it is about being brave and being comfortable with, I guess, putting yourself out there, in that creative way. So yeah, I mean, I guess you come across a lot of clients, I would imagine, that probably have that sort of fear around
all the time,
their identity.
There's one story that I'd love to quickly mention. This is before the pandemic, where most of us met in person for meetings. And before I even met her online, she was a VA. And from her website, it looked very corporate. It was greys and dark blues and very sort of professional corporate vibes. When I met her at the local cafe to talk about a rebrand, she had like bubblegum pink hair. She had like flashing trainers, bright pink sparkly lipstick. And I'm like, hang on a second. Like, you are not matching up to what I see online. I'm like, why are you holding this magic bag? And she said exact same thing as me. She thought it wouldn't be professional enough and no one would hire as a VA. But what I want to say, even more so now, the power of your personal brand is far more important nowadays with the rise of AI, because people don't trust as much nowadays, and we are always questioning, is this real, is this fake? And the best way to sort of counteract that is just putting yourself out there as your true authentic self. And so when I delve deep back into that lady who I met at that cafe, she reminded me of a flamingo because it's that baby pink. And then I thought, VAs, what do? They bring balance to your life. So flamingos, they balance on one leg, and so that became her logo. And now, even to this day, her nickname is the Flamingo Lady, because it's brought up that consistency, that they remember her. She's got a bit of a nickname. She stands out in a sea of vanilla VAs that are using the same corporate blues and greys, and that really is the power of a personalized brand.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you want to be remembered, you've got to do something or show something that's going to get people remembering you. And, and it does absolutely start with your branding and how you present yourself. A lot of entrepreneurs think branding is merely just a logo and some colours. And you and I both know that it goes deeper than that. So from your perspective, what actually makes a brand work online, especially when somebody is selling digital products or services?
Yeah, so for me, the pivotal moment that made me realize like branding goes far deeper than hex codes and logos and fonts is I stumbled across a fantastic TED talk by Simon Sinek, and he talks about the power of why. And he did like an example of like a company that leads in from the what's and the how, which is all the tools and features, compared to someone who led with the why, which is their whole mission and values. And that is what us humans connect with more. So our brain is built on like a limbic and neocortex. So I think the neocortex is where you appeal to their emotions. So that's through things like your stories, your why, your mission, your vision, and your values. So think of that as like a foundation to a house. once you've done that inner work, as I call it, then that's when it makes it super easy to choose colors and fonts and logos. So that's kind of like the inner shell and building it from there. I think if you don't work on that, it creates uneven foundation for a brand to build on. And often you'll see that where people keep rebranding every 3 to 6 months, it's because they haven't done the inner work. And it's not the most fun or flashy stuff, but it's the most needed for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I think laying those core foundations at the very beginning, before you even dive into how your brand needs to look, I think it is really important.
Yeah.
I know when I was running my branding studio, one thing I would always do with clients is I would do a brand discovery workshop.
Yes.
And that was gold because it gave them clarity around their business and the brand that they were creating and what that meant and how did they want to be perceived, and all of those key details that end up influencing the actual final identity. So you need to do that work. It's so important. And I think you're absolutely right. I think understanding what your why is and the mission of your business gives you direction, so you know where you're going. And I don't know about you, but I do come across a lot of people that you can tell instantly they've not done those foundational pieces.
Definitely. I want to tell you a quick story that ties in really well with talking about your why. About 5 years ago, I came across a client who, she's like a children's entertainer. So she dresses up as like Elsa from Frozen, or like, Rapunzel or Beauty and the Beast, that sort of thing. And so just like you want to get into the, under the hood and really find out what is their mission and why. It turns out, if we go back to her story, when she mentioned when she was growing up, she had a little sister called, well, I won't name names, but she had a little sister, and unfortunately she was going through leukemia. And so at the time I think we still have a charity called Make a Wish, which is basically grant, dying children's wishes. And this client of mine, she basically said she didn't really remember childhood because her parents were so focused on getting like her little sister better. Anyway, one of the wishes was to go to Disneyland, Florida, to see obviously all the Disney characters and the magic of the kingdom. And she said back then it was the first time that she felt like she could live her childhood and not have to worry about all the things that were going on behind the scenes with her sister, hospital visits, that sort of thing. She then reflected back as she got older that trip was gifted because, let's face it, it's an investment. It's expensive to go to somewhere like Disneyland, Florida. And so when she grew up, she was already a natural singer and dancer. But what she wanted to do, she wanted to bring the magic of Disney to people's doorsteps who couldn't afford it. So bringing in that fun. And unfortunately, her sister did pass away a few years afterwards. And so in the branding, we actually had a nod to her sister, because in the Disney world, when someone passes away, they turn into a star. And so that's what we did. We put a little star inside the snowflake, because she really bonded with Frozen because of the two sisters. So it was a snowflake with a star in the middle. And only she knows that. But that is why I love to do what I do, is to bring that kind of symbolism in. And she knows that she's carrying on that legacy, remembering her sister. So that's just one example of like why it's so important to really understand your why. And when I worked with her, like it gave me chills hearing her story, but it was just nice to know that we could still keep that legacy going.
Oh my God, I love that. Even when you're telling that story, you just think, God, how powerful is that?
Yeah.
Because like you say, she's carrying the memory of her sister with her through the work that she's doing. Yeah. And this is it. It goes way, way deeper, doesn't it, than just having some pretty aesthetics that make your business look good. It's really kind of getting to the heart and soul of what you're about, and why you want to do the work that you're doing, and how you are going to be different with that work. And I think a lot can be said by the elements and the sort of the things that you choose, but it has to connect to something.
Because that's the thing, like you got to have that feeling of impact and something that either lights you up, gives you joy or passion, or something just, fuels your fire. If you're doing that, then you're in alignment. But I think that's why it's called like the North Star, isn't it? It's that alignment of like, am I doing everything in my business that is pushing me forward to my bigger vision and mission? I mean, just for my own story, when it comes to my why, I remember just thinking back at my design agency job, thinking how miserable I was, thinking I should be the happiest girl ever. I've just graduated, I've just got this job and working with like global brands, but why am I so depressed and, you know, taking it out on my family at home and just dreading the day, especially when Sunday came around. And eventually my health really gave out to the point where I just totally collapsed in the foyer. And it wasn't even like are you okay? It was more like, when can you get back to work? And I often joked like I should have a sleeping bag under my desk. So working till about 3 a.m. most days. And so I just thought, this isn't life. Surely this is not what I've worked hard for, just to be in this monotonous routine of unhappiness. So I started looking outward and seeing all these like female, you know, solopreneurs doing their own design jobs and seeing how happy they were and like having like the, you know, the control over their own life. And so when I handed in my notice, both my male creative directors refused it. They thought I was being too over emotional and maybe I should think about it for a week. And I was like, okay, I humored them because I was only like, I don't know, 24 at the time. And so a week later, I said, no, I still would like to leave based on health reasons. And then fast forward a month to my leaving doom. And one of my creative directors got a little bit tipsy and came over to me and said, do you know what, Gemma? Female freelancers just don't do that well in the world. Why don't you just come back to work on Monday?
Oh my God.
And I just thought, like, a swear word came to mind. I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I just said, right, I'm out of here. And what sort of fueled it for me was at that same time, I had a friend of mine, a school friend, who was going through a bit of a messy divorce. And so she was trying to create a bit of a side hustle for herself. And she was really good at sewing. And so she was taking people's baby grows and turning them into teddy bear keepsakes. And at the time, she was like, I just need a logo. Didn't obviously understand the power of the why, but at the time, it was just to get her going. And I remember charging something like £15 to do this logo. But I got so much more joy and fulfillment working with her than I did at the corporate job. And that was kind of my why. I wanted to prove that women can be successful on their own, creating a business. And that's why I only work with women, because of my own experiences has kind of led me there. So that's only one sort of string to my why. But it helps kind of reframe the alignment of where you're going.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. I love the fact that you've used your experience for good. And I'm sitting here smiling because our experience is not too dissimilar.
Really?
Because I was working at a design agency which was all men. And at the time, so I got the job after I had my children. And I went back. I was 4 days after I had when my daughter was starting school, and I was working on these projects, and it was heavy. That we were in the construction sector, so it was a lot of, you know, not greatly interesting work, but it was design work, and that's what I wanted to do. And I remember wanting to go out to client meetings and be involved in the pre-sales and that side of things.
Yeah.
And because I had young children, I was actually told by my male bosses that I couldn't. I needed to be home by a certain time to be there for the kids. And I wasn't going to be promoted for quite a considerable amount of time, because I had to be there for a period to really prove myself. And it was the whole attitude. I was the only woman, and it was like, essentially I was being told that, go and sit in the corner and just do your work. That's essentially what they were saying to me. And I remember waking up one day, and like you, like, it really got to me, because I was really passionate about the work I was doing, and I really wanted to do good work. And I was really committed, but they'd made it clear that because I was a mum and I had young children, there was no growth for the foreseeable future. And like you, that just really affected
Yeah.
me. And I just remember waking up one day and I just said to my husband, I'm going it alone. I'm starting my own
Yeah.
business. I'm not dealing with this anymore. It wasn't the first time that I'd come across those kind of barriers,
Yes.
but it was going to be the last time, because I didn't understand why, because I was a mum,
Yeah.
I was less capable when I'd proved my worth,
Yeah. There is
you know,
still this
so many times,
stigma.
you know.
There's
Yeah.
still this awful stigma about women. Like, I remember them asking me, like, do you plan on getting married soon or having children soon? Because and they shouldn't be asking those questions, but I
No.
know what they're doing. They're trying to work out, are you actually going to be working here? Are you going to be committed enough? And so I can totally relate to that. But did you have a good support system when you said that I want to leave the agency?
My husband is amazing. So he has really supported me in every stage.
Good.
So I did my degree at 28 because I had another career in London beforehand. I was working in communications.
Yeah.
And so when I'd done sort of night school for 5 years, learning the art of design.
Oh,
So I
nice.
did typography design and visual thinking and
Yes.
any course that I could do at London College of Communication. I went and did that after my job. So I did that for
Yes.
5 years. And then I left to do a diploma at the Mary Ward Centre in central London, where I built my portfolio. And then at 28, I was able to then leave and pay for university for 3 years and put
Nice.
myself through university. So I actually qualified as an official graphic designer at 31. But right through my London career, I was doing design work, and I used to work in an ad agency where I would do their designing and stuff like that. So for me, my degree was more about getting that final, you
Yeah.
know, sort of, you know, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. But when I got my first job at 31 officially as a graphic designer, because that was what my dream was,
Yes.
and it's really interesting that you said it, that you had worked really hard to get into a design job, thinking that you were going to be really happy, and then you finding that not being the case. That was exactly what happened with me as well. It was the moment I from my degree, I walked into my first job, which was for a national brand. And very quickly, I realised that it wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be. And I think at university, because it was a vocational degree, so I did a foundation and I did a BA. I was doing a lot of project-based work, but it was vocational, so it was sort of industry-led. So
Yes.
I was doing these creative projects, and I was creating these amazing brands and having such fun. And then I walked into my first job as a graphic and web designer for quite a corporate, company, and it wasn't fun at all.
Yeah.
And I just remember the disappointment and feeling that I'd been sold a dud.
Yeah. And the thing is, in the
um,
design world, they won't like access you until you have that degree. I like you, I tried to get into design work and try and work away from the bottom, but it's always met,
yeah,
you haven't got a degree, come back later. So you have to put yourself
exactly.
through those educational courses to be taken seriously. But the reason why I asked about the support system is because I remember when I wanted to leave the job, my partner was very supportive, but my parents weren't. They were very much like, well, they come from an age where it's like you get a job, you stay in it for life, you get your
Yeah,
pension, and that's it. So they were like, why are you leaving this safe job when that's what you've worked your whole entire educational years for? Why do you want to leave after 2 years? And to me, happiness is way more important than putting yourself through a job that is bringing you utter misery. And ultimately, these jobs aren't always safe. So you might as well do something
yeah,
you enjoy. That's why life is short. You really have to go for what lights you up, regardless, even if your own family don't see the support. They are now, because obviously they can see that I've been doing it for the last 8 years. But like most parents, they're worried, aren't they? And they just thought, you got that job, you should stay in it. But I just
yeah.
couldn't. I just couldn't.
Yeah, and I think the whole idea of going self-employed is not everybody sees it for what it is. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. I was at networking earlier today and we were having this discussion about how people perceive people that work, who are self-employed.
Mm.
And, you know, people don't think you've got a real job. And it's like, but I do have a real job. I'm earning money. I'm doing, yeah, but
Yes.
you're not really
How's your
working, are you?
hobby going? Yeah,
Yeah,
I
you're
hate
being a
that.
hobbyist. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm actually, you know, I'm doing this work, which is really important. That's making me
Yes.
happy and lighting me up. Yeah, but it's not really, you're not really earning what you should, you know, you probably could be earning, are you? You know, it's that kind of attitude.
This blows my mind because the irony, most of them are actually earning more money than they could at conventional job anyway. I think it's just the
100%.
fact that we can call the shots in the sense of like, so I'm more of a night owl. So typically I like to do most of my work when everyone's sleeping. But that's part of the plus of having your own business is you can be the captain of your life. So I used to resent having to ask my two bosses, "Oh, can I take this week off here? Oh, you can't. Sandra's got it." And I hate little things like that. I need freedom. I think that was another part of my why is I need total
Yeah.
freedom over my life. And I've noticed in networking, when you speak to other female entrepreneurs, that is a running pattern. It's just this like, I need total freedom.
Yeah, 100%. I think, especially if you're creative as well, it's
Yes.
very difficult to cage somebody that's creative because you
Yes.
see the world through a very different lens.
Yes.
And even now, I mean, I'm a digital nomad really because I take my laptop and I pop up wherever. I'm never at home. I'm always out and about working. But it fuels
Yes.
my creativity in the way I am able to work. And I love it because I feel free. And
Yes.
so I think when you're feeling trapped and you feel like you have to be
Yeah.
somewhere because you've got to pay the bills,
Yeah.
it can be very difficult and it can be very sort of disheartening and you feel like you're at work a long time.
I mean, that's the thing. I used to sit there and think, God, I'll be in traffic for an hour just getting there. And I only live about 20 minutes away from the agency because it's rush hour. You just sat in traffic. By the time you
Yeah.
get to your office, you feel absolutely frazzled. You're under fluorescent lighting, fake plants. And then your creative director comes along, plonks a brief on your desk and says, I need that done by midday. You look at your clock and think it's only an hour away. And as a creative, your mind just goes blank. Nothing that's
Yes.
inspiring me because I'm just amongst all these skyscrapers outside. Whereas now, like you say, you can go and take yourself off to a local cafe, to the woods, the park, the beach, get inspired, come back to your desk, and then the creative juices are flowing. That is exactly what you mean, isn't it? Is where us
Yeah.
creators, we can't be put in these rigid things. You have to let it kind of flow naturally.
Yeah, 100%. I cannot sit in an office. Just before lockdown, I actually got my own office in sort of
Oh
shared
yeah,
office space, and I was really excited. This was when I had my branding studio because I had a team, and the idea was that it was going to be a central hub for my team to come together.
yes,
And I moved in the January. And it was such a massive step. But over Christmas, my husband and I, we decorated the space, made it all very lovely and very on brand. And then, of course, lockdown hit at the end of March. And so I was in the office for about 3 months before, obviously, we then had to close. And then throughout lockdown, as soon as we had those periods where we can get out and work, I chose to go to cafes. I chose
yeah,
other environments other than being contained within that office space. And then as soon
yes.
as lockdown opened up, I then closed my office because I realized that actually it didn't work for me
Yes,
having that containment. My best work comes from me being out and about,
absolutely.
and the way I think now and the ideas that I have are so much bigger
It would
because
be.
I don't feel trapped. Is that the same for you? Do you find that you need to have that freedom and flexibility?
There is something about it, and I can't describe it or put it into words, but it's something magical that happens when you step away from something. So when you're in this kind of like rut or like blank screen and inspiration just tends to like halt, the best thing you can do is just get out of your four walls,
Mm.
whether that is a local cafe and just being inspired by people watching, or going to the woodlands and hugging trees, or whatever it is. Every time I've done that, something, it's like an energy. It just, everything just unblocks and you just have like total clarity. And I think it just comes back down to being humans. We need to be
Yeah.
out and about connecting with nature, especially as creators. We need that constant inspiration. There's a reason why a lot of authors will take themselves off to these retreats. When they want to write a book, they need to be out of their four walls, their own environment, and they just dedicate it. And it's usually in these beautiful areas with waterfalls and lakes and animals around. So yes, absolutely, it's the best thing you can do when you feel like you're stuck in a rut. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree with you. It's just, it's so important. So, what do you think the biggest branding mistakes are that you see other entrepreneurs make when they're trying to grow their business?
I think it's the comparisonitis. I think that's the worst thing that I see all the time is like, I'm seeing X, Y, and Z. They seem to be doing really well. Therefore, I'm just going to brand how they are because that must be the magical formula. When actually we know it's because of their personality and how they bring their personal influence throughout their branding. So what I would say is try to avoid trends or comparing yourself to your direct competitors, because you're at a totally different chapter. You're in your own lane. And so really the biggest advice I can give to counteract that is to ask yourself, what do I like? Who am I? What
Mm,
represents me? And, you know, I see people go, well, I've chosen red because that seems to be what the industry color is, but actually I can't stand red. And you look at color psychology, and it's like, say they're a wellness brand, like say they're like I don't know, homeopathy, that sort of thing. Red is not going to work. You know, you really have to look at the psychology of color and think what influences calmness and well-being and
yeah.
tranquility. So I think it is that, it's this comparisonitis. Like, and another thing I see a lot is because they're starting out, they're comparing themselves to someone who's been in it for like years. So never compare your chapter 1 to their chapter 20. It's very much like just trust who you are and fuel that and pour that into your own brand, because ultimately it's going to make you stand out. The last thing you want to be is a carbon copy of someone else or just another vanilla person who's just emulating. I think people can feel that more now. They know when it's
Yeah.
not authentic.
Yeah, 100%. I think you touched upon it earlier when you sort of said that as humans, we want to connect, and
Yes.
equally we want to do that with the people that we're following online. And
Yeah.
it's really interesting because there are people that I've come across online that are quite well known in their space, but then you look at their online identity and their
Yes.
branding and their logo and all of that, and it isn't actually very good.
Not
It's almost like
natural.
they've skipped over that
Yeah.
stage of things, which I find really interesting because you're putting all this effort in to be invisible and present,
Yes.
but forgetting the foundational pieces.
Yes. It's like I always remember when I left the design agency and I was trying to build my business, I literally had zero clients. So I'm looking for things like networking, that sort of thing. And I came across this lady called Anna Dower, and she's basically a design mentor for graphic designers. And she's kind of that in between, at the time, the bridge between what they don't teach you at uni, she teaches at the business practice. But the reason why I was so drawn to her is because once she was like repping a flower crown in her brand photography, she was using red and pink, which is very, at the time, you just didn't see it in like designer people. It's very like more the corporate edgy. And she even had a podcast called The Uncool Designer because she talked about her story of like not fitting in, and she had a great blog which I really resonated with as a plus size woman, and it was along the lines of you can be fat and successful. So she's using like these really deep stories that connected me to her. And ever since then, I've always been in her world. I've always bought from her because she is her true, authentic self. And yes, she totally stood out, but in all the right ways. So that was just one of many examples of like why I like to interact with brands like that. As you say, you can feel it when someone's just putting on a mask or a facade
Yeah.
because they think it's the right brand to hide behind, when actually it's just being honest with yourself and saying, who am I? What do I want to be known for? And how do I fuel that into a brand?
Yeah, 100%. I love that. I love the fact that you've obviously picked up on her authenticity and that she's been able to inject her personality and beliefs into the work she's doing. And then that's coming out through her aesthetics and the way she
Yeah,
presents herself. And that is so incredibly powerful because that's the thing that does make you stand out and make you be very different.
yeah,
When I launched my branding studio back in 2017, so my business is called Pink Lemon Branding and Design, and I wanted something creative, being a creative, but I
yes,
wanted something that kind of was a nod to my two girls because they were the reason really that I went into self-employment in the first
your
place.
why.
Yeah, my why, but I wanted something that was fun.
Yes.
And my branding was very different because it was pink and yellow. It was pink lemons. So there was a lot of pink and a lot of lemons. And this whole belief about how lemons can infuse what you do, and they've got a real health
Yes.
aspect to it, and they can actually rebuild, and there's so many positive things to
Yes.
lemons. They're so incredibly powerful, and I likened that to sort of the power of branding and
Mm.
how your branding can really speak to the hearts of your audience and make that connection.
Yes.
And so that my brand then it was kind of a little bit out there, not different to yours, but I suppose a similar approach.
Yes.
I needed that because I needed to stand out because I always remember when I was looking at branding companies local when I was doing that research before I launched. And at the time, my business was very local. So I was building it in my town. I
Yes.
had to have an angle that really stood me out so
Yes.
that people could remember. So I focused on that creativity and trying to infuse my personality
Yes.
and why I was doing what I was doing and stuff like that. And I always remember going networking, and then people would be like, "You're that pink lemon person,
Yes.
aren't you?
Exactly.
That pink lemon woman, and or that pink lemonade, or yeah." It
It worked.
landed, and it
Absolutely.
worked, and so I saw firsthand
Yeah.
the power of just kind of being different in a
Yes.
way that aligns to who you are, because everybody is so different.
Do you think it's because people just have this kind of like, for a better a phrase, this sort of sheep mentality of like, I just want to fit in. I don't want to be
Yeah.
too flashy because I might be, targeted out. Does it come from like that primitive mind of like, we must be kept low or like keep ourselves small to be safe? I wonder if it's something to do with like that psychology of like our primal brain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we are conditioned in
Yeah,
society to be a part of the herd.
that's it.
And
Yes.
it starts at school level,
Yeah.
when you go into school, and even now, you can sort of see when I go into my daughter's school, they're expected to behave a certain way.
Yes.
They want them talking a certain way. There's
Yes.
expectations that are put on people, and I think without realizing it, as you grow up, I suppose you just become constrained within these boundaries that society have put in place.
Yes.
And unless you are an extrovert where you want to really be different, if you're not that way, naturally you're going to lean into, I have to fit in,
Yeah.
because fitting in is what keeps us safe.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think there is a primal instinct there to want to blend in.
Yes.
The problem is, as entrepreneurs, we can't blend in. We have to stand out.
Have to.
So that shift in mindset is very much needed, because in order to be visible and to be remembered, we have to position ourselves
Yes.
differently. So it's that I feel like I should blend in, but I know I shouldn't, but I don't know, and then I feel uncomfortable, and
Yes. I think that's how
yeah,
they start, isn't it? Is they start by going, well, that person's doing that type of brand. So I'll start off by just emulating those colors and fonts because therefore I feel safe. but then they start to feel this misalignment. They attract the wrong clients. They don't feel they're being themselves. And then there's like a detachment. They start to resent their brand, and therefore they don't show up. The visibility drops, and then they have this whole identity crisis again. But I have to touch upon something just happened recently, actually. There was a client I worked with back in 2020, and she does she's quite witchy herself, and so she wanted this kind of magical candle business, and she went for like this navy blue and gold. And now 6 years later, she's told me all she sees now in the witchy candle business is navy blue and gold. So now she's on the opposite end. She's seeing other people emulate her, and now she's like, I need to change my colors and fonts to stand out. So it's like, how do we help those people? You know, I mean, I think it comes back down to pushing you into the brand more, because they can't replicate you. They can replicate your colors and your fonts and logo. They cannot replicate you. So that's been kind of my advice, is like, you know how like, you see on TikTok more so because it's video, and they talk about their story. So like there was this guy who's on the Isle of Wight and he makes fudge. I'm sure there's loads of fudge makers on the Isle of Wight and around the south coast of the UK. But because he's there with his like little brimmed hat and he's got his cool like pastel pink apron on, he's talking about his story and his family pop in. No one can replicate that. So maybe that is the superpower for brands for 2026 going forward. Is like, yes, you're going to get your copycats, but actually putting you into it is going to help you like set them apart.
Yeah, 100%. Because you're right, nobody can replicate you. And it's that uniqueness that you bring to it that actually is what people are buying into. You're always going to get those that are going to copy, but they can't copy your personality in that. Jenna Kutcher, who is obviously in the online space, I think she does this really well, where she talks about things relating to her life and her favorite things, and she kind of infuses that in the work that she does. So there are certain things that if I was going to describe her as a person, I would pick up on, because she's brought that into the work that she does. And I think you're absolutely right. I think it's about owning our story and not being afraid to share, and also the things that make you different. You know, like I talked earlier, again, I was at this networking and we were talking about working from home or being out and about, and I completely like own the fact that I see myself as a digital nomad, because it's just me, my laptop, and that's my world, you know, through my working day, and I love it. It's not for everybody. And there was a time when I had my branding studio that I felt the other way, like I had to make myself look bigger. Loads of people in my team, and it's a we, not an I, and all of this. I think these days I'm just trying to own it is me. It is like, this is what I'm creating. It is me. I'm here to help. And when people come to my masterclass, or they buy a product, or they join my membership, or whatever, it's me. It's nobody else. It's me. They get me. You know, and then everything that I build is off the back of that, so to speak. But yeah, I think it is just really owning who you are.
I think, as you touched upon with Jenna Kutcher, it's bringing the stories, because as humans, we love a story. That's what we've been doing for many, many, many years. And I have to mention, like, the more that I've infused more of my, I guess, story, or even just certain vulnerabilities, it allows my audience to connect with me more. So, like, give an example, I talk about my word of the year, and I tend to do like an email or a social media post around December time, what my reflections are and what I want to do more in the upcoming year. And I always do newsletters, but this particular one, I kid you not, I had 10 replies on it, because I talked about my health struggles, you know, my desire to you know, start a family, my PCOS, and all the hormonal issues and stuff like that. Just explaining that that's been a background thing, because I find people like to separate their business from their life. So they'll have like a personal account and a business account. But actually, I think it's a blend of both. I think if you can blend the both, that's what really like elevates your personal brand. And I have people saying, oh, I've been through the exact same thing as you, like I recommend this, or I'm so glad you talked about it, it's not talked about enough in the online space, or you made me feel seen. So I think if people just drop the guard down a little bit and just talk about their life, whatever that is, whether it's the good, the bad, or the ugly, I think that is the superpower. I think that is the biggest sort of key emphasis, isn't it? Is when it comes to
Yeah.
branding, is influence all parts of you, whether it's the messy side. I think people like to see the messy side because it's real and human, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think we resonate with that. I
Yes.
think we like to, well, I think we're nosy, like just by default. We like to look in to other people's worlds and see how
Yes.
they're doing it and what's going on. And I think from a human to human point, that connection piece is really important.
Yes.
And I agree with you. I think it's about infusing you into your business, because when we're building a personal brand, I'm not talking about building a company brand. I'm talking like solopreneurs, entrepreneurs that are building online businesses are usually on their own doing it.
Yes.
And in order for people to really kind of understand what they're about, they have to infuse their personality and share about them, because I don't think it works when you've got this whole faceless marketing and stuff like that. I don't know about you, but I would never buy from somebody that I don't trust.
Exactly.
And I
And
think
the other
trust is
thing,
such a huge thing. It's building that trust online.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because we are literally going through a trust recession right now because of AI, really. And as
Yeah.
much as I love AI, I would recommend you use it more in the back end of your business rather than the front end. So I don't know about you, but have you seen a lot of people are starting to do brand photography through AI? And I'm, as much as it probably comes across as like a bit of fun, what you're saying is like, this is not me. And you can't connect with a fake photograph because
No.
that subconsciously tells your prospective clients what else is going to be fake in this business. So by all means use AI in the systems and automations of your emails and whatever else, but I think when it comes to you, especially you as the brand, and you're using AI for your brand photography and your logos, it's just not going to cut the mustard. I think that is literally death to your business. It's a very quick way to kill your business off, I believe.
I agree with you 100%. I was at a networking and this gentleman, he was talking about his podcast, and I think he was sort of leading a discussion, and he got really excited because he was showing us how he's launched this podcast, but it's not him.
Right.
It's an automated AI bot delivering his content on this podcast. And I was sitting there and I just felt I had it just didn't resonate with me at all. If I thought for a moment I was listening to a bot through a podcast, I wouldn't waste my time.
But
People listen to podcast. I know, but people listen to podcasts because they want to connect with a human. They want to hear what that human has to say. And the moment we start replacing ourselves with bots, like you say, we're stepping into that fakeness.
Simulation, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's just, and I think it's all about integrity and having integrity for yourself as well. And I think if you're going to share, like, people buy people. It's cliche, but it's true.
It's so true. I think I've actually unsubscribed from a lot of things that I've seen online. So, for example, if I follow, oh, what was it I saw the other day? It was like Lad Bible, where they used to do like funny videos. Now they're creating their funny videos through AI, and you can tell it's AI because it's all warped fingers and things like that. Unsubscribed straight away, because why would I want to fuel my mind with fake content? Like, as you say, I would hate the thought of listening to a podcast knowing there's not a real human behind, because it's not real thoughts. So that takes away the whole art of podcast, which is what we're doing, like storytelling, discussions, and sharing anecdotes. To know that's coming from an AI thing, it just gives me the ick.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. It's complete sort of it just complete turn off, really. And I feel really strongly about that. I think when you're representing your brand, you have to be really careful how you show up and what you share with your audience. And if you're putting fake stuff out there that is not you, it's like the whole avatar thing.
Exactly.
I don't get the whole avatar thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm in the minority. Let me know, guys. Am I in the minority? I just don't get it. I don't want to be an avatar. I'm a real person and I want to present myself as a real person.
Yes.
I'm a real person behind my emails, behind the DMs, I just feel that it's a point of trust. So why would you replace that by having something fake? And I think we have to be really careful where we go with this stuff.
Yes. I mean, I've watched things like design summits, and I remember last year, going back to Anna Dow, she runs these design summits, and so she gets other designers to talk about anything that they want to highlight. And this one lady, she has really embraced AI in her graphic design business. And I can see why she does it, because she's trying to show her artwork in a mock-up. So I can see where there's certain areas where it could be helpful. So she does a lot of like bottle packaging or like sweet packaging. And so she wants to mock it up on a beach or where there's like lemons and things like that. That's where I can see AI being really helpful. But the other person that I saw, this wasn't in the summit, it was someone else, she was teaching people how to upload their photos into this software, and it like scans your entire body and face and generates you in video format or photo format. That's where I think I draw the line, because I wouldn't want to interact with a video or a photo that isn't solely you, because now AI is getting so good, it's very hard to tell. And to know that I feel like I'm interacting with a photo that feels like you but isn't you, again, it's giving subliminal messages of like what else is going to be fake in her business, interacting with their services. But it's good and bad to everything, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it's going to get to a point actually that the businesses that stand out and kind of win at the game are going to be the ones that keep that personal connection, that keep that human interaction in their business. And I think you're right. I think AI absolutely has its place. I love me a bit of chat. I can chat all day to chat, and we have some great conversations and whatnot. And brainstorming and things like that it's so powerful. But I think there is a line between using it as a tool to help you with idea generation and coming up with content ideas and things like that, to bringing AI into your business where it is basically you. I feel like then.
When you talk to chat, do you say please and thank you, just in case if robots do take over, they know that we were kind to them in the beginning?
I do. But what makes me laugh, I was having a laugh with my friends about it the other day, because we were talking about chat. And part of this accountability group, and we were sort of saying how we've incorporated chat in our work, and I love the way it gives me this positive reinforcement at the end. So I'll give it an idea. I like something I'm thinking about, and we'll work through this idea. And then it will say to me, you're doing such a good job, Karen, carry on. I'm like, pat on the back from chat.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. I'm like, even if nobody else agrees with what I'm trying to do, I know the chat. I've got cheerleader in chat. So I absolutely, I think there's definitely a place for AI, just not.
Have you also noticed the big players in the online space are actually reshaping the way they've done courses because of this? So I've noticed now they're turning their evergreen courses, where you can just buy it offline, to now guided. So now the person, so say it was someone like Jenna Kutcher, she may have had a course where you could just buy it off her shop and you just go through it yourself. Now they're bringing them into the course where they guide you over the modules and weeks. So I've noticed that's also been a byproduct of the AI world, is bringing you back into your signature courses.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting actually, because at the moment I'm creating version 2.0 of my membership. So I've decided to switch platforms, and the platform that I'm sort of building, honestly, it's so much work, but it is going to be, it's going to be a good move.
Yeah.
But this platform has AI capability,
Yeah.
so to the point where, and actually I really like this aspect of it. I can be the bot in the platform, but
Yes.
every piece of content I have in this platform, and I've got so many hours of content, it's ridiculous. Whenever somebody asks a question and does a search, it will only present them with my content, but I'm the bot delivering that content.
Oh,
So it's like
nice.
the Karen bot. So
Yes.
I thought that was pretty cool because it's my content. It's
Yes.
not gone and swept Google or somebody else's content. It's all to do with my content, and then presenting it to the member,
Yes.
because that's obviously what they're looking for. But it's really interesting how AI is kind of being infused into these
Yeah.
platforms, and there's some really cool stuff happening. I just think we have to be mindful at how much are we going to let it in,
Yes.
to how much are we going to be there
I
to
agree.
support as well. But yeah, it's going to be interesting in the next sort of 5-10 years where
Yes.
this leads to. um so yeah, especially in the world of design as well. It's interesting. I've had people show me their designs for their courses. So I talk about course logos and building out your environment and
Yeah.
branding it and making it, really personal to your brand. And I've actually had people present me with logos that have been AI generated.
Oh, I
What do you
see.
think about that?
I mean, if you are literally at the start of your business and, money's tight because you're putting in other things, I guess it's a starting point. I'm not going to sort of poo-poo that, but I think for longevity reasons, it's probably best that you do invest 6 months to a year later in a proper soul aligned brand, as I would call it, because it really is the identity of everything. Like you just mentioned about courses, people don't think to brand a course. They think, I've just got one logo, that would do. When actually everything is a brand touch point, whether it's a course,
Yeah.
even a Zoom background could be a brand touch point, a business card, your photo on LinkedIn, whatever. Everything needs to feel branded. So in the sense of just getting going and it just gets you out there, then fair enough. At least that is going to get the momentum going. But I do think long term, you should eventually reinvest that into a proper personal brand.
Yeah, and I think actually in all the investments you can make, I think this is one investment that is really going to set your business up
Yes.
and set you apart from everybody else, especially if you've got somebody like you, Gemma, that kind of works from the inside out. And that, like you say, aligns it very much to who they are and what they want to achieve in their business as well.
But equally, and I know it's going to sound really odd of me saying, but I actually wouldn't recommend someone invest in a full brand identity at the start of their business, purely because this is what I've noticed, when you start a business, you don't really know who you are, who you want to work with, or what your niche is. So I would say that probably the better thing out of AI is maybe go for something a bit more of an editable template, because that way at least you can infuse a bit more of your control of your colors, whereas AI is just going to do a very flat pixel JPEG that's going to be awful. Because in those 6 months to a year in your business, you'll soon quickly realize who you don't like working with, what you want to actually offer, because we always start with a laundry list of services. If I look back when I started, I offered like social media and brand photography as well as websites and branding. And actually over those first couple of years, I realized that not only was I was attracting the wrong clients with my corporate branding, but I was offering services that didn't light me up and burnt me out. So I would definitely say start something small, like a template. If it has to be an AI logo, fair enough, but use that year as like a bit of a gauge to work out, actually, I'm going to get rid of that. This is who I am. And like you said, it's that core identity work that needs to be the main emphasis in the first year of business, for sure.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you there. I think that first 6 months to a year it should be very much spent figuring who you are and what you want.
Yes.
I think for my first 9 months in business, I didn't have anything. I
Yeah.
was just working as a freelance web designer. And then
Yeah.
it wasn't until I'd been networking, I'd had conversations, and I got a feel for the landscape that I was working in
Yes.
and how I wanted to present myself.
Yeah.
That's when I then started to kind of think seriously about my identity and how I needed to present my business and stuff. So 100%, I really do agree with you there. If somebody is listening right now and feels like their brand doesn't reflect who they are anymore, because let's face it, in business, it's a constant evolution.
Absolutely.
What's a simple first step that they can take this week to realign it?
Well, I would literally get a pen and paper and I would draw literally a compass, and I would divide it into quarters, and I would call one of them your why, the other one would be your so aligned client, the other one would be what you offer, and the last one would be how you do it. So the first one I would start off with is literally map out your why. Is it freedom? Is it fun? More time with your family? Is there something else that is just driving that mission? If you can really just spend a good day just working on your why, that will fuel the next part. So once you've figured out your why, you want to figure out, who do I want to work with? Who do I love to work with? So for me, I knew it was definitely women. I wanted to come away from that male dominated environment because I saw there's a gap. Women don't back themselves as much as men.
Yeah.
So I knew that was my ideal client. And like you just said, it's a brand evolution. So start with something, because I guarantee over the next few years, it's just going to get more and more and more refined. But it's a starting point. Once you've mapped out your ideal client and you figure out where they hang out, what are their pain points, why do they need you? That's where you can move on to the next segment, is what you offer. So what are your skills, your expertise, everything that you can bring to the table that's going to help that transformation of your client. And the last one is just, how are you different? How do you bring that unique status, I call it? How are you going to perform that transformation? Is it your process? Is it just who you are in business? So in my case, an example, I love astrology. So I present branding through the lens of astrology. So it's just all these little things that you can do that just make you feel more unique and more in alignment. So your why, your ideal client, what you do and how you do it. That's really the best thing that you can do to start off with if you're stuck at the early signs of your brand journey.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's absolutely great, because that gives people something concrete
Yes.
to work to. And like you say, these is so important. These are foundational steps and need to be in place so that you can then build on it going forward.
Also, just quickly as well, have you heard of Ikigai?
No.
So Ikigai, so I always talk about this, but there was this Netflix documentary I watched about 4 or 5 years ago, and hopefully it's still on there because it's literally left that big impression on me. It's called Live to 100, and it's basically this guy who visits the blue zones in the world, because he's like, why are these people living to 100? Is it their food? Is it the environment? What is it? Turns out there's lots of things, but there was one running pattern, and it's this ikigai, which is this feeling of having a purpose. As humans, we need to have a fulfillment of a community that we are giving impact, and that is a sense of purpose. That we can liken that to the North Star compass of that why. What is your purpose? What gets you up in the morning? What makes you feel like you're making an impact? That is going to make you feel so much in more alignment once you nail that down. And that's what makes them live to 100, because they're just so happy and content. That's why all these patterns kept coming up. So definitely there's in the Japanese world, they call it ikigai, which is very similar to what we talked about, where they work out, what do you need more in the world? What are you good at? That sort of thing. So if you can Google ikigai, that'll give you another helpful direction when working out your who, what, why, and how.
Yeah, I 100% agree there. I think really nailing your purpose and getting aligned with that, I think is so important. I'll check that out. I've not heard of that. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I often think, when people retire and they're just sitting there waiting to, they're probably not going to live as long as somebody that's out there doing stuff with a real focus and a being. And I think as humans, we need we need that purpose. We need to, yeah, 100% need to be a part of something.
Because there was a story where this is like they're in like Sardinia or some sort of like Italian island, and the elderly lady was in like an old people's home, and her health was just rapidly going downhill. And most of the Italian culture, they actually believe having the family all around. They just sort of build upon the house. As soon as they brought the elderly grandmother back into the home, it was like she just had a 180. Like she just totally changed. Her spark came back. She was cooking for the family. She was reading bedtime stories to the grandchildren. So there's something about being in a community. I think that's why we love networking, because you've got to find your tribe, as we call it. And that sense of purpose of like looking after the family, nurturing with food, looking after the grandchildren. We can apply that in our business. How do we feel we're giving back? How are we helping our clients? That is what's going to fuel you and your soul. That's what's going to bring the most happiness.
I agree. I think it's really important to find your tribe, like you say. And I know with entrepreneurs that are running businesses, it can be really lonely, because you're building something, and not everybody understands that, especially if they're not in the world of business. So being able to surround yourself by like-minded people that are similar in what they're trying to achieve, I think really kind of, it brings in a different layer and a different energy that can really help to fuel you and keep you focused. So I think that's such a great piece of advice, actually. If you are somebody that is feeling lonely, feeling like you want to create this business, but you're just finding that you're spending a lot of time on your own and you're feeling very disconnected, then find a networking group or find a community of people that get you, that understand what you're doing, because it will go a long way to keeping you focused and on track.
There's something about being in a room with women that get it, because as I said at the start of this podcast, I wasn't around family that really supported that mission of mine. And as soon as you get yourself in these rooms, whether it's networking, conferences, business retreats, you are just supported because they get it and they understand it. And what that does is that elevates you all. Think, we are on something really special. And that's the beauty of putting yourself in those rooms. Because sometimes, I don't know if you hear this from your clients, they'll say, oh, I don't feel ready, or that these people are more successful than me. I don't care. Get your ass in that room, because then you'll feel more confident and you'll just keep doing it. So
100%. You know, confidence comes after action,
absolutely,
not before. So I remember, like, at the very start of my business journey, the one thing, I didn't know anything. So I started my business very naive. No one in my family has a business. I didn't know anything about business. All I knew is that I had a desire to work for myself and call my own shots. Absolutely. But the one thing I think that really stood me in good stead was that I knew I needed to go networking. And even before I was making any money, I put myself in a room of other business owners, and I was scared. I mean, I felt, talk about imposter syndrome. I definitely felt like I did not belong. But through conversation and building those connections, I started to learn, and then I started to do, and then I started to become confident because I felt supported.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the key thing. Get yourself in with other people that are like-minded, that do not necessarily what you do, but are in a similar space, and have those conversations and be open to building those relationships, because amazing things happen when that happens, you know.
Absolutely. You have to push through that level of discomfort to get to that other side of growth. Because I remember the first ever networking experience before the pandemic, where we actually met in like hotels and did it in person. I sat in my car with like clammy hands, just like, you could do this, you could do this. The door's just there. Get out your car and just walk into that room. And I just remember just feeling like all hot and sweaty and nervous. But after a period of time, these women were my biggest supporters. I mean, it's not always about who's in the room. It's about that 6 degrees of connections. They know someone, they know someone. And when you're networking, all you're doing is you're building relationships, which ultimately builds your visibility and fuels the growth of your business. So, and just to touch upon what you said about imposter syndrome, everyone has that. All that is your brain's way of keeping you safe. because we don't know what to expect. So it's trying to keep you safe by going, well, this could go wrong or that can go wrong. You got to tell your brain, and I often call it the mean girl because it says nasty things. You say, thank you for your opinion, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then once you've done it, you've told your brain, we've survived, therefore it's a safe place, and it just gets easier and easier. So definitely give your imposter syndrome a name. If you give it a name, it really helps, and just push through it anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, I think the reality of building a business means that there's a lot of discomfort, because there's a lot of things that you're going to have to go through in order to kind of push through to get, to achieve the success you want. And it's just embracing that. It's getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think that's probably the best way to say it, because it just, whatever level you're at, there's just a whole load of new discomfort to go through, but that's where growth happens.
And equally, that chimes back into finding a great networking group, because when you have those wobbles or those new levels, new devils, as I call it, you've got that support group to go, oh my God, I've just experienced this. Has anyone else gone through that or has any advice? You've got that sounding board. So that's why as a solopreneur who's building a business, your network really is your worth.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. And we met at Network, didn't we? With Networking event. And, I don't know about you, but I've made some absolutely brilliant connections and had some wonderful collaborations with people. And it really does help. So I do recommend my listeners, even if you are building a business online, it doesn't replace human connection. So find whatever you need, whether it's an online group, an in-person group, and go and build those connections and have those real conversations, because they're the things that are going to help you stay focused and stay anchored so that you can actually achieve your goals. And that's the point. So Gemma, thank you very much. Now, if my listeners are interested in finding out more about you, and I highly recommend checking out Gemma's work because she is incredible, where can they find you?
Yes, I've got a couple of options. So if you are looking just to start your branding journey, then head over to my website, which is infinity-creative.co.uk, where I can provide some soul line branding. But if you are starting out and you're a bit more of a DIY, wants to learn it yourself, you're more than welcome to join my Canva Coven, which is a Canva learning membership where I teach lots of workshops and tips and tricks and things like that. So that's on templateemporium.co.uk, but I can send Karen some links and things to follow up. So that'd be the two places I recommend.
Yes, I'm going to put all the links in the show notes so that my listeners can find you and visit and hopefully sign up for your free community in that. Because as I said, I think the work that you do is incredible. And even if people just go and see how to do it, like from you, I think it's definitely worthwhile. So Gemma, thank you very much for coming on today's show and for sharing your tips and your wisdom and everything. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed this. So thank you.
Ditto. I've really enjoyed our chat, and just thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed being on your podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope this has given you some clarity and sparked some new ideas for your business. Now, if you found this helpful, I would love you to share it with a friend or a fellow entrepreneur who is also building their online business, because this might be what they need to hear today. And if this episode has you thinking that you're ready to start turning your expertise into income that works for you, then I would love to invite you to join my membership. Head on over to my website, www.sellyourbrillianceonline.com/membership. I will be back next week with another episode, but until then, have a wonderful week. Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Online Business Uncovered. If today's conversation has sparked an idea or gave you a dose of clarity, then please make sure to check out the show notes for all the links and resources mentioned. New episodes land every Thursday, so hit follow or subscribe to stay in the loop. And if you're loving the show, a quick rating or review goes a long way in helping more brilliant entrepreneurs like you find this show. Until next time, keep showing up, keep sharing your brilliance, and remember, freedom in business is possible, and it starts with taking the next right step.